This week we've come to Peterborough, which has one of the highest number of homelessness in the whole region. 1 in every 189 people here is either sleeping rough or in temporary accommodation. And some of them come here to the YMCA. Now there are 85 people living here, and the idea is they get help and support to get their lives back on track. People like 19-year-old Michael Hall. So tell us how you ended up here.
Well, I ended up getting kicked out by my mum. It happened a couple of times, but then this time was permanent. And I ended up staying at 2 random strangers which owned a shop in Queensgate. And then after a while, I had to find a hostel. And I found Time Stop, and I went up from there. The
idea here is that you are helped to get your life in order. Do you think that that's being achieved?
Yeah, that's definitely being achieved, and I'm being taught how to deal with council tax and bills and everything that I need to then progress.
If you hadn't come here, you'd have presumably been sleeping rough, would you?
Quite possibly, but I reckon if it did get that far, then one of my members of family would have picked me up, but I ended up going to a hostel.
So you've got yourself a job now, even though it doesn't pay a lot of money, and the ambition is to get out of here and get your own place eventually, is it?
Yeah, eventually, but for now I can afford this place and I can't afford anywhere else.
And that would be the same for most of the people who come here, presumably?
Yeah, it just depends on their jobs, I guess, and how much pay they get.
We're standing here in front of the Christmas tree, and for most people, Christmas is a family time. Is there a family here, or what will you do for Christmas?
For Christmas, I'll be spending it with my brother and sister-in-law at their house, because I don't want to spend it alone.
And that would be the case here, would it?
Quite possibly.
Mikey, listen, we hope next year is a good year for you, and thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you.
Well, there are 89 flats like this. This one has just been refurbished. Just have a look in here. Nice little bathroom with a hand basin, toilet and a shower. Got some cupboards here and some wardrobes. A couple of easy chairs if you want to sit around. Good little cooking area and kitchen. So they've got an oven and a hob up the top. Table and chairs if you want to do some work, and a bed. Now the idea that this is functional and it's not too comfortable, so that people who come here have somewhere decent to live, but they want to move on and get a job and get somewhere to live permanently. Let's go and talk to Glen Simmons. So Glen, when somebody comes here and you are trying to rebuild their lives, what sort of state are they in?
Well, their self-esteem is down. You know, they've lost everything behind them. It might have been 1 or 2 mistakes down their life, because we're all, you know, one or two steps from being made homeless. So a lot of it is about getting their self-esteem together again. And then the next stage after that is looking for employment, which we help them into.
It sounds easy, doesn't it? How do you rebuild somebody's self-esteem?
Well, that's difficult. That's about talking, you know, talking to them, listening. There's a lot of counselling skills involved, and putting people in the right directions.
Now, looking around here, I know you've got a computer room, but you don't have a community area. Is that intentional?
It is and it isn't, if that makes sense. If you have a community area, in the real world, outside, we don't have community areas. We don't have community areas down my street. So we try and make it realistic for when they move on to independent living fully.
And you're successful in people not coming back. A lot of people go into jobs from here.
Yes, yes. Currently, for our residents here, 33% are in employment, training or education.
And then they move, and that must be great for you when you see them move out and they move into something of their own.
It's fantastic. It's absolutely a lovely feeling. On average, we move somebody out 1 person a week.
If you could have one wish, what would it be?
More accommodation for them to move on to. I also believe that what we should have, and because of the cuts over the years, and you know, local authorities are under pressure, is what we should bring back is float and support. So when they move on to the next stage, we can actually go out and keep them into their house.
Glen, thanks so much.
Thanks
for having us here today as well.
Fantastic to see you. Thank you.
Well, of course, there are 2 parts to this problem. There are rough sleepers and homeless families. Now, here in Peterborough, they've seen an increase of 200% in the number of families looking for help over the last 2 years. There is a new scheme. Hannah Olsen has been looking at that.
It once housed office workers and businesses, But now it's to have a new lease of life. Bretton Court in Peterborough is being converted into flats that'll provide permanent homes for families in the city struggling to find somewhere to live.
What we are proposing to do is to convert what is an office building into around about 43 apartments, mostly two-bedroomed apartments, which is our most desperate need at the moment, with a couple of one-beds in there as well.
Peterborough is one of the fastest growing areas in the east, and the City Council is battling to cope with the growing problem of homelessness.
We set up a company, a housing joint venture, a couple of years ago. We're now going to be using that joint venture to bring forward more developments. It will include new build accommodation as well as acquiring properties off the open market, as well as further refurbishment jobs such as this one.
So you're doing everything you can. Are you frustrated that the government isn't giving you the support that you need to do that?
The government do help us with some funding to tackle homelessness and the housing crisis. We receive about £400,000 from government. Just down the road, not far from here, Luton Council, similar size, similar demographics, similar issues I suspect to Peterborough, received some £2.5 million.
At Prime Minister's questions this week, Theresa May defended the government's plan to tackle homelessness.
Since 2011, councils have been able to place families into private rented accommodation so they can get a suitable place sooner. We've changed the law in relation to so that families with children shouldn't find themselves in B&B accommodation except in an emergency. And through implementing the Homelessness Reduction Act, we're making sure our families at risk can get support before they find themselves homeless.
In this region, thousands of people need a home. Almost 600 people are rough sleepers. But the figures are much higher for people living in temporary accommodation at almost 15,500. That's a total number of homeless in the east of more than 16,000. One of those waiting for a permanent home is Michelle. She has 2 young boys and was evicted from her house after complaining to the landlord about poor living conditions. After staying in a hotel, she's now been given a temporary home by the charity Hope Into Action.
When I lost my house, I felt like I had nothing. Like all my security has just been taken away. And I actually felt so empty inside. All right, the house was in poor condition. Not my fault, it was down to my landlord's. But when I got this house, when the lady said to me on the phone, "Oh, we've got a house for you," it just felt like I was given the world.
The pressure on councils to provide accommodation for people like Michelle is acute. Peterborough City Council can house 85 families temporarily at St Michael's Gate. There are another 130 places elsewhere in the city, but that's still not enough.
It's the law that councils must help vulnerable homeless people. So when temporary accommodation like St Michael's Gate is full, their only option is to pay for B&Bs and hotels. And that's expensive because they can't claim back housing benefit from the government. Next year, the Homelessness Reduction Act comes into force, and that'll mean councils will have to help even more people and intervene earlier.
It is the right thing to do, but we're concerned and quite anxious about our ability to deliver against that expectation.
The reasons why there are more homeless people and who's going to pay to help them may be a big political issue, but for people like Michelle, they just care about wanting a safe place to live.
Just hope to get a secure place and somewhere we can call home, and for my kids to just grow up and be the 2 boys that they are.
Well, we asked to speak to the Housing Minister, but he wasn't available. However, we did get this from the Department of Communities and Local Government. They sent this statement. Councils across the east of England have a duty to provide safe and secure temporary accommodation. Nationally, we're providing over £1 billion up to 2020 to ensure no one goes without a bed for the night. And our new Homelessness Reduction Act will require councils to step in earlier to prevent people being left without anywhere to go. We're providing £72 million in funding to support local authorities, including Peterborough, to implement those reforms. Well, let's put some of those points now to Councillor John Holditch from the City Council and to Daniel Zeichner, the Labour MP for Cambridge. Councillor Holditch, how difficult is it for you as a council to provide enough accommodation for people who are struggling?
I think it's very difficult. I mean, it's been a perfect storm created largely by the government with its tax changes and its benefit changes. Also, the new procedures that are coming in will add tremendous cost. We have, this time 2 years ago, 97 people that were, families that were homeless. Currently it's 350. And that's a huge cost because we've got about 120 in bed and breakfast, which costs us quite a bit of money.
And that bed and breakfast isn't acceptable, is it?
It's not acceptable at all, especially in this day and age. We've managed to create 145 new units of accommodation, and you know, we've got a huge pool of which that we will announce very shortly that we're doing converting office blocks, one just across the road from here. We've bought some houses offline that are currently being built, but you know, it all costs money, and we've got a budget, and we believe that it's going to cost us an extra 10 million within the next 3 years.
And all of this at a time when you've lost, what, 80% of your funding?
We've lost 80%, and we've still got £35 million to go, the extra 20%, and we believe that's a step too far. Because not only do we have to, cut the things, we've taken on extra responsibilities as well, extra older people, extra kids and so on.
The thing is that you're a Conservative councillor, and there is criticism in what you're saying of a Conservative government.
Well, yes. I mean, I say the fair funding campaign, it's no good asking the government for more money, but there's a fairer distribution. Public health, for instance, one of the lowest funded in the country. If we could get some money out of them to build schools, because I've got 45 million now in the budget to build schools for the population we've got now, the birth rate that we've got now, that's going to cost me £4.5 million a year to borrow and pay back. If we could get them to fund some schools, that would be very, very helpful. And if we could get them to assist us with fairer funding, take Luton, similar sort of problems to Peterborough. They get 2.7 million, and currently Peterborough's getting about 450,000.
Daniel Zeichner, that's a fair point, isn't it? It isn't fair.
Well, I have every sympathy for John and for other councillors who are struggling with these problems. But it was a political choice back in 2010, and when you look at the figures, particularly for people sleeping on the streets, and that's a real issue in my city of Cambridge, the numbers of people sleeping rough in this country were very high in 1997. Through 13 years of Labour government, the numbers fell and fell and fell. And then the graph is absolutely clear. From that moment on, from 2010, the numbers have been rising and rising and rising. And in my city of Cambridge, people are really unhappy about the numbers of people sleeping on the streets. The council's doing everything it can, but frankly, we need more support from government.
The problem is, and everybody would accept, I think, that you need to spend money on people who are homeless or rough sleeping. But actually, the Labour government left the incoming Conservative government with a massive debt.
No, the problem was at that
No,
time
they
because
did.
we had a financial crisis.
Yeah, but they left them with the debt.
But there were choices in 2010, and the economy was recovering. But George Osborne and David Laws made a crucial decision to go down this path of austerity, and these are the implications. The end result of that is people sleeping on the streets, because we know it doesn't have to be like that. We've got the evidence to show that if you put the money into the support services, there are always going to be people who have crises in their lives. But if you've got the support services there to help them, you can solve it. But if you haven't got the housing, you haven't got support, people end up on the streets. I was speaking to a young man the other day who told me that he was renting a room in Milton, and the landlord put up the rent from £110 a week to £210 a week. What could he do? Now, we would put controls on the amounts that people could put rents up. He's ended up on the streets. That's the problem we've got.
Is there a happy medium between governments leaving a big debt and balancing the books?
I was hoping this wouldn't be too political, but it was the Labour government that built fewer affordable homes than any government since the war. But
Not true.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you it is.
Well,
it certainly
housing
is
association homes or council housing we're talking.
Well, they're both.
Because the money was put into housing association homes.
Affordable homes is what he's saying. It doesn't matter where they are.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm afraid this is frequently misrepresented, and it's very important people understand this. Also, the Labour government poured a huge amount of money into improving.
Didn't they have lots of policies for house building, but didn't actually build very much?
£20 billion spent improving the quality of council housing.
yes.
For people living in that housing, it made a real difference. But John is absolutely right to say that there wasn't enough new housing being built at that time. And that's what we need to move back to. We need more council housing, and I think councils would be keen to build, frankly, if they were given the chance to do so.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we've got a good record of building new homes, but it certainly isn't enough. And this has been brought about, as Daniel just said, rents are going up, the benefits capped, so therefore people can't afford the gap in the middle. So therefore landlords are not letting to social tenants.
Yeah. Both of you, thank you very much. Homelessness now, and talk to Mick Thorpe. He works for Cross Keys Homes, working with homeless families by and large.
Yeah, a lot of young women and children, but I've also got some families, mother, father and just children within the accommodations, yes.
And basically you're providing accommodation, which means that they don't have to go into bed and breakfast or hotels.
The majority of them have moved on from hotels where they've had shared facilities, where the accommodation I provide is they've got their own bedroom and bathrooms and kitchens, so which means a lot to the people that come to.
So if you've got young families and you've been in bed and breakfast, you would have been sharing all of those things.
Yes, and as I say, when people come to my accommodation, they have tears in their eyes because for months, possibly 6 months, they've had to share facilities, unable to cook for themselves, so it means so much.
And the reason that people end up with you is what?
Again, they've come from presenting themselves to the local council. It could be because of the mental health, sickness, disability, financial reasons, could have been evicted, break up in relationships within families. I say I've got a lot of young mothers with young children, a lot of divorced people as well, so quite a mix of people.
The ambition here at the YMCA is that they help people get back on their feet and back into their own lives, really, without being supported. Is that your ambition as well?
Again, I'm lucky to work for a company that offers specialist intervention, and because a lot of people do need support, building their confidence, providing a bit of education and knowledge to be able to fill out forms, pay their bills. So that's what I aim, and the rest of Cross Key Homes wish to provide for people to move on to their own permanent accommodation.
You talk to people, and the thing you hear time and time and again is filling out forms. Would that ease the situation if people could do that?
If the support was there available for them, a lot of people go to the local library if it was open at that particular time, or they just are told to go onto a computer. A lot of people haven't got computer skills, so I'm able to support them with that, and I've got other colleagues who are...
It's not easy though, is it?
No, it's not. A lot of the form is quite lengthy and to fill out as well. A lot of people do not understand how to fill them, particularly if they've got to do it on their own. A lot of people don't like to ask for advice as well. They just feel that it's demeaning to them, so they will muddle the way through it.
John Holditch, it is too complicated, isn't it?
It's horrendous, really, it's going to get worse, because at the moment there's about 1,500 people come to City Council as homeless each year. We only accept about 400, but under the new rules, and we estimate it will go up to about 1,900 a year, we have to do something for everybody. And to make sure it's fair, unfortunately you have to fill in all these forms and make sure that we've ticked every box.
And the assessment, is the assessment process right?
I don't know about the assessment process, but what I do know is that we're seeing another example of the government asking councils to do things without giving them the resources to do it. And that is why it's so unfair on councils. The government's got to take some responsibility for this. And it's not about form filling, it's actually about having the houses, having the support, and then the problem can be solved. It is solvable, it's doable.
It's a long road though, isn't it? I mean, there isn't an easy fix.
You say that, but actually this is a rich country. It really ought to be possible for us to be housing people at Christmas. We should not be having hundreds and hundreds of people, children, homeless at Christmas in Cambridgeshire. And that's what we've got at the moment.
But it isn't just for Christmas. I mean...
Just make it absolutely clear, we haven't got children and families on the streets in Peterborough. We do have about 30 rough sleepers, and we do have a winter and night shelter. So there's no reason in Peterborough they should be on the street.
All of you, thank you very much for being with us here.